Let's talk about models for design process. Specifically, how do we get both the design right and the right design? The answer are funnels. This is one funnel. It's an elaboration step. You start with an idea, and then you need to generate lots of ideas. This is where you sample that design space, that solution space, but through brainstorming, ideation, iteration, etc. We've been generating different user and task descriptions, and so by generating those, by collecting that data, you get this larger crop of information that you can try and support. But what's the problem with just elaborating these, just kind of constantly expanding? You can't handle everything. So you can't end up with an infinite set of tasks and then hope to try and accomplish it. You don't have this magical solution for everything, which is why you need to use the other funnel, reduction steps. As the design process continues, you start to reduce. This is where you make decisions. You go from broad to specific, and you end up on a focal point to try and arrive at a final design. Combining these two creates what's known as Lasso's funnel. So you have these elaboration reduction steps, and you do this iteratively. So you can kind of elaborate, and then you reduce, and you keep kind of going. But how does this fit into utility definition and optimization? How does it get the design right and the right design? Well, I've already given a hint when I said it was iterative. You might consider this diagram the double diamond. This is where you have two of Lasso's funnels. The first is discovering and then defining, and then you develop and deliver. In both cases, you'll probably be more iterative. It's probably more messy and cyclical than this. But you can really think about these two activities. On the left, you get the right design. You discover the problem space. You discover the tasks that users are doing. And you start to define different requirements to come up with a definition of your problem space. You kind of do this search for the right utility function first. Then you get the design right. Once you have the right specification of what you want to do, you then develop and deliver. Now, if we want to act agilely, you'll then kind of go back and forth, but you can separate these two steps to really think critically about what you should be doing in any step. And the linchpin of this double diamond is the requirements definition right in the middle. So let's talk about what requirements should look like. Here's how to define some good, effective requirements. So far, we've collected user and task descriptions. So with an accounting system, for example, you might have different roles or stakeholders, accountants, managers, and support staffs. And you might have taken their tasks and started to understand that task space. So you might have them organized into routine and infrequent tasks and important and unimportant tasks. So you have some sense of what people are doing and how valuable and how frequent all of these tasks are. Now that we've done this elaboration step, we need to reduce to actionable requirements. So how do we do this? How do we reduce? Well, you might focus in on a certain stakeholder. So fading out managers and support staff, you might focus on the accountants themselves. That might be the most important thing, or where you can really, meet some of these needs. You may also prioritize the different tasks. So you may remove the hope of supporting infrequent and unimportant tasks and really focus on those routine and important tasks, or also the infrequent and important tasks, so just the important tasks. When I say reduce, I mean synthesize and prioritize. You might take tasks that could be combined together and combine them, or think about how you might support multiple tasks with one design element. You also might want to prioritize. So here we've got the important tasks, the unimportant, and there's no sense to support the unimportant. Same thing for potential users. We want to support the accountants and not the other users. In milestone 1, you'll be categorizing as must include, should include, could include, and exclude. So this will give you a sense of what tasks you support and what you don't support. And you have those other tasks there if something changes down the line. Again, this is an iterative process. When we say actionable, it needs to be defined, it has to be clear, it has to be organized, and it has to be specific. There are many ways to define requirements, but let's look at 2 as examples. You've probably seen this before. This is a Volare system, and you can watch a YouTube video to follow up on more information. What are some of the key elements that you see here? Take a second. First thing you might notice is there's a reference number. This helps you refer to the different requirements so that you can actually organize around them. And there are categories. Remember, we had those unimportant and important, or infrequent, unfrequent. There's some way of giving a categorization to these tasks or grouping them together so you actually understand the space as a whole. There's a link to the different tasks. So when you've got your task examples and you've got your personas, possibly your user descriptions, you can link those together so that it all makes sense. You can kind of say, this task, and go take a look. There's a description. This is critical. Users, you can link these to personas. And there's a level of support. So what is the level that this requirement needs to be successful? What is your success criteria here? How do you support it? You also have priorities, which will help you prioritize things down the line. And there's some sort of versioning or tracking. So since this is an iterative process, you may want to keep track of the different versions. Now, the Valeria system's quite comprehensive. You could do something a little bit simpler depending on your need. So for example, you might have this type of an example. There's a reference number for requirement 7. There's a level of support, 1 minute effort, 0 iteration to accomplish a certain task. The task is specified concretely, and the users are specified. 3 or more participants. You may have to link this to personas. So this is very specific. This also accomplishes a lot of what the Valeria system does, but in a more succinct way. So if you want to do something more lightweight, you can do this. Just make sure that you've got these different organizational elements. So now it's your turn. Create a requirement definition mockup using a requirement from Lab 1, which you'll see in a second. As an example, okay, never mind. I'm not going to make you do this. I have it on good authority that you know how to define requirements. Most of you from management engineering will know how to do a Valeria system. You've probably seen these things before. So I'm going to trust that you know how to do this. Just make sure that they're organized, specify the task, stakeholder, and the level of support. So good requirements are organized and specific. They have categories, priorities, reference numbers, etc., and they say what's needed at what level for who. And that's the requirements for your requirements when it comes to milestone 1. Some useful categories you might have. Functional requirements, so what the system should do. So a game should be challenging for a range of user abilities, for example. Non-functional, constraints on the system or development. So the game should run on many platforms. It should run the Switch, the Xbox, etc. And there might be others. There might be data requirements, environmental requirements, context of use, both physical and social, etc. You can take a look at the textbook section 10.3 to understand more about how to organize these. You now have everything you need for milestone 1. So read the textbook, consult your instructional staff, and explore online materials to help you out. Otherwise, you're good to proceed. The key takeaways for this lesson are good design follows an explainable process. You need to both find the correct problem, so get the right design, and find a solution that gets the problem, that solves that problem, gets the design right. Iterative elaboration and reduction steps can help you achieve this. Requirements encapsulate the first, the correct problem, so you can direct the latter, find a good solution. So you might do this kind of elaboration and reduction step twice to really understand the right requirements and then go and solve those requirements. The other thing is that there are characteristics for effective requirements. They need to be organized and specify the task, stakeholder, and a level of support. Existing formats like Valeria can help you achieve this, but you can use more lightweight methods as well, as long as they really meet these criteria for a good requirement. So be able to talk about your design process and define effective requirements. That's all for now. See you next time.